Hello, welcome to today's story time. It's a little bit warm out for this time of year, so I figured a fire probably isn't the best thing. So even though the atmosphere is pretty good, still being in the great outdoors, I figured kind of be a good place to do a little story time, kind of just before you have a campfire or what have you. So today we're going to go through the prologue for the 5th mission in Cegorach's Last Laugh narrative campaign. We'll also do a quick review of the scenario. This is going to be a very a unique scenario from perspective of types of players and the way the board's going to be set up and the actual objectives. So without further ado, here's the prologue to mission number 5, also called the Prologue. So, as the portal shimmered, a dark figure emerged from the blue and white swirls of energy. The chamber suddenly fell silent, as every eye, Harlequin, human, and Tau, turned to stare at the unexpected presence. Before a word could be said, a second figure passed through the portal in a blur of color to stand next to the figure in void black robes. "Listen, my fellow players," cried the voice from under the dark hood. "The time has come, the stage is ready, and the curtain rises on what was foreseen. Cegorach's crystalline tome has opened, and we have read his commands." Striding quickly toward the Dark One, the Shadow Seer and Death Jester replied, "What has been commanded?" The Dark One addressed the two standing before him. "Your triumvirate of heroes has been broken for too long, since the Solitaire fell to the Alpha Legion's lord." Lowering his hood and turning to his right, he continued, "Cegorach has commanded that the triumvirate be restored, and he has brought the Solitaire to you, now on the eve of the prologue." With those words, an excited murmuring began amongst those gathered. Addressing the entire host, the Dark One announced, "Yes, the time has come for the final act to be played out. As with any great performance, and this is the greatest, the prologue will be a small foreshadowing of what is to come. Cegorach has called you together, and you have rehearsed your parts. It is now time. Gather yourselves, place us all, and prepare for the opening curtain. The enemy has fallen upon a primitive race, and their bloodlust threatens them with extinction." Interrupting, the Death Jester asked in a disbelieving tone, "Are we to simply be saviors of the least of the races and simply throw back the enemy's warbands?" The Dark One patiently replied, "Your vision is narrowed by the time you've spent in rehearsal. No, your part is not as savior of single races, but saviors of the galaxy. As Ennead walks now and our race begins to unify, they take the fight to our enemy. You, however, will change the future by the protection or destruction of certain strands of fate. All the strands are about to converge on this one point, and these least of the races, as you have called them, is destined to become a powerful ally in the next millennia. If we fail here to preserve this race, many strands will be cut, and the ones remaining will be fraught with peril, loss, and misery." "My apologies for my lack of vision," replied the Death Jester. "Cegorach's plans are far-sighted, and I was blinded. I will trust in Cegorach's wisdom." The Dark One turned to the Shadow Seer. "You have seen the nexus in the strands, have you not?" "Yes, and I knew the time was near. The Shadow Seer paused and corrected himself. "We are ready." "Then go. I will leave the three of you to lead this performance." With that, the Dark One turned and disappeared behind the shimmering energy of the portal. The Grand Army was assembled, and the planet scried. Khorne's minions had fallen upon this planet with a bloodlust that would not easily be sated. Settlements were being wiped out with each passing hour, the defenders brutally exacting a high price upon the invaders. This only fueled the enemy's lust for battle. Portals were set to open across the surface of the planet as the various troops of the Grand Army engaged the Chaos forces, ravaging the heart of the planet. In one corner of the planet, the enemy host's commander was found, and here would fall the hero's troop itself, bent on the destruction of the daemon responsible for this slaughter. As the Chaos Lords crested the ridge, he looked down on the forested clearing in the distance. Below, in an open area, he saw primitive mud buildings and a throng of reptile humanoids. "Ha! We will fight well and shed their blood for Khorne this day." A demon crested the ridge and stood over him. "Fall upon them swiftly, and let us wade through their blood." With that, the demon let out a howl as he raised his sword, signaling the charge. Okay. So that is the intro to the mission number 5, where we're going to see something a little different. There will be, on this particular board, and I'll show you the actual scenario in a second, a race of reptiles, lizardmen kind of creatures, and some of their beasts, their mounts and reptile allies. And it's an entirely forested board. Now, what's really neat about this is that the Chaos player will be able to come in on basically both ends of the table. And the whole point of this is really a kill point match, okay? But what's different is that the Chaos player gets a kill point for every Lizardman unit or beast unit within the Lizardman army, and a kill point for every Harlequin Grand Army unit killed, okay? Now, the Harlequin Grand Army, on the other hand, only gets kill points for the Chaos units destroyed, but he also gets kill points or rescue points for each surviving unit of the Lizardman army. So there's kind of a little bit of tension there. Each loss of a Lizardman or unit basically ticks the kill points in one direction or the other. Now, there's a wrinkle to this, and that is that the Lizardmen don't realize that the Harlequins themselves are allies. All they see are two strange races in their territory, and they've been attacked. So they're going to attack the closest player unit on the table. So let's take a quick look at the board, and I'll talk through some of the intricacies of this particular mission, and even take a quick look at the units within that Lizardman army. All right? Take a look. Alright, so this is the board that we kind of laid it out. In the center is a series of mud hut buildings for the Lizardmen. Now, the smaller ones are all medium buildings, and the two larger ones are large. They're armor value 12, so they're not very strong. Small ones are 4 hull points, the large ones are 5. Just keeping it simple, They don't really have ramparts, but you can get up on top, and just doesn't offer cover saves. But you can only get on top if there's a vertical or internal ladder. That's how you actually get up. The largest building actually has an internal ladder. Basically nothing with the bulky rule can get into these buildings. So it's just for man-sized units. So it's going to restrict certain units from getting in. None of the beasts that the Lizardmen have can go in, but all Lizardmen units can actually be inside. Now, this is a kind of an interesting kind of scenario. It is Dave's Grand Army versus Austin's Corn Space Marines, and in this particular scenario, what we're going to start with is what you see here: Lizardmen deployed central, and then the Chaos Space Marine player, Austin, will be able to deploy 12 inches in from either of the short table edges. Now, we'll see how he decides to do that, whether he's going to use both or just come in all from one side. Now, this terrain is supposed to represent kind of an open area within kind of a jungle forest, but it still has a lot of tangled undergrowth. So it's difficult terrain for purposes of anything that's in touch with the ground. Skimmers don't treat it as difficult terrain. The only thing that is open ground really is anything within 3 inches of those buildings, or that central area between the buildings, I'll call it the courtyard in the middle. That's open ground for all units. And all of the waterways, regardless of how close they are to buildings, are always considered difficult terrain for purposes of ground units. Skimmers, again, don't have to worry about it. Trying to keep thematic here. Now, there's a couple special rules we're going to use in this particular game. As we've been using before, the webway portal is still going to be the way that the Grand Army is going to arrive. But as they've been using this for millennia now, they will again be able to charge the turn they come in from that portal, even though they're coming in from reserves or even on turn 1, if he wants to. So that it's kind of it's an advantage that they have, but I just think it's very thematic. Now, the Lizardmen, I have what I call the primitive fear rule, and that rule essentially basically means that the Lizardmen don't really realize that the Harlequins are there to help them. So they're going to treat both players as enemy units, and they've got a mechanism as a player or faction. What they'll do is they will shoot or charge or run toward, move toward the closest player unit that they can actually see. So I'll go over the Lizardmen units a little bit later, but so they can attack both players. Okay, so that's going to be kind of a force that can go either way. We don't know how. It depends on how the two different players actually engage on the tabletop. Who's going to take the brunt of the Lizardmen force attacks? Now, what's interesting is, since the Harlequins are there to actually help rescue these Lizardmen, there's going to be a special rule that'll basically allow the Harlequins to hit and run if they are in close combat with just Lizardmen. Okay. Now, in addition, because they're there trying not to do any damage, the Harlequin Grand Army player will only really need to attack with just the units that are in base contact. They don't have to pile in and don't have to try to attack as really hard. They just need to attack with just the ones that are in base contact, which represents them at least defending themselves. And sometimes, in order to defend yourself, you have to kill the attacker, even though it is someone they're trying to save, just to buy them enough time so they can hopefully hit and run. So we'll see how that plays out during the scenario. Now, the buildings, we're going to use this in an interesting fashion. If the Lizardmen units themselves fall back, they're going to fall back to the nearest building, and they'll enter it if any of them gets within 2 inches of the door. That represents them fleeing to their shelter. Now, since buildings act just like vehicles, and you basically are fearless once you're inside, it's basically an automatic regroup for any Lizardmen units that actually go in. That'll allow them to shoot out of the building if they have a shooting weapon, or most likely come out of the building on their next turn. And of course, being a building, they can charge right out of the building into the enemy unit. So I'm hoping is going to be a kind of exciting scenario for both players. Now, the only special or secondary objective in here is going to be slay the warlord, because here both players' warlords are crucial, and both players are trying to kill each other's warlord, as well as kill points. So, primary objectives are kill points, and each enemy player unit destroyed gives you 1 kill point. The Lizardmen units, every one killed is a victory point or kill point to the Chaos player. Doesn't matter how they got killed. And every one that survives at the end of the game is a victory point for the Grand Army player. So it's kind of going to be an interesting approach to this particular battle. So let's see how it plays out. Let's go ahead and take a look at the different Lizardmen units and what the Skink Priest powers are. Okay. All right. So here are the 4 Lizardmen. We'll call them squads. Each is 4 models. The the 2 on the left, we'll start there. Both those have shields, and those are going to be considered combat shields, a 6-up invuln. The 2 on the right won't have that. All of them are armed basically with a close combat weapon, and they have 2 attacks. They're kind of like a knob profile. They just don't have the mob rule type or here we go type rules. But there's toughness 4, strength 4, weapon skill 4, plus skill 2, stuff like that. Now, in the back row, you'll see the one with the banner pole. That pole there, as long as Lizardmen units are within 12 inches of that, they will be fearless. So that'll actually help them stick around a little bit more. But of course, that's gone. Then they act as normal. Now these all have a 5-up scaly hide armor save, so they're a little bit tougher than knobs, standard knobs, but not quite as tough as the Ardboy version. Alright, so let's take a look next at the Skinks. Now, right in the center we have the Skink Priest. Now, the Skink Priest is essentially kind of a human profile. You know, weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, 3. You know, we're actually give it 3 wounds too, because it's a HQ kind of thing. But all these models, even the Lizardmen before it, or Saurus units before it, were all initiative 2. Skink Priest only has 1 attack though, and Skink Priest is leadership 9, which is, you know, he'll help him stick around a little bit more. But he does have a 6-up save. They do have a little bit of hide, scaly hide going for them too. But that's it. Just the Skink Priest anyway. He wears his ornamental hides and stuff. That gives him his armor save. But he's a Psyker, so he does have a couple powers we'll talk about in a little bit. But now the 4 Skinks to the left, upper left, all have blowpipes, which are essentially a pistol. Yeah, I shouldn't call it a pistol. It's more of an Assault 1 weapon. Shooting a Fleshbane poison weapon, no AP value. And they have a close combat weapon with them. So they will be the only shooting guys in the army. The 3 on the upper left or right just are armed with a close combat weapon. You have a stabby one. But it is also poisoned. Fleshbane. Because Skinks like their poison. Now, the Skinks, the 3 on the bottom, are individual units. There are 3 sentries, and they'll be around the edge of the battlefield. And all the Skinks have stealth and shrouded, and the Skink sentries are actually armed with basically long spears. So that gives them a +3 initiative. So they're actually like initiative 5. So they'll likely be able to hit at least simultaneous, if not before, most of the opponents they run into. Now, there are Grand Army elements that do have an initiative 6, so. But that's what these units are representing. Now, of course, they like their reptile beasts, their dinosaur-type beasts. So I've included 3 different types in here. To the left, we have 3 raptors. I don't know what models those are. I got them from a collection from someone. And those 3, basically I'm using the Ravener stats. So 3 wounds, strength, and toughness are 4, 5 initiative, 3 attacks, but they've got the 2 claws and a bite, so it's 4 basically. But they have leadership 6. Now they don't have, I'm not using any of the Tyrannid instinctive behaviors. That doesn't make any sense here. They're trained beasts for the Lizardmen. But they do have a 6-ups armor save, just because they have, thicker hide. The raptors on the right are cold ones. They're the old school Lizardmen cold ones. Those are actually a little bit better. They're actually lower initiative 4, still 3 wounds, but their strength and toughness 5. Both the raptor units are beasts, so they're going to move through the cover, no problem at all. But because of the scaly hide on the raptors to the right, they have a 5-up armor save. Again, going against stuff with bolt guns, the armor's not going to really play into this much. Finally, in the middle is a Styrachodon. You may recognize him from my Exiled army, just without the Howdah. But I'm kind of patterned him a little bit after the Carnifex. He's only strength and toughness 6. But all these guys are weapon skill 4, except the raptors to the right, left, which are weapon skill 5. It does have, this Styrachodon does have 4 wounds and armor 3, so there's a lot of potential for it sticking around. But there are things in the Chaos Army that can definitely take it down, so it's not going to be a situation where it's the one thing that's going to keep them all alive. It all depends on how the Chaos player decides to engage the Lizardmen forces. Okay, so that's what's assisting, if you will. Oh, one more thing. Yeah, the raptors to the left, they're actually the Skink Priest's bodyguard. And so they will be automatically successful lookout sir. So they will always be taking the damage first, as long as the Skink Priest is part of the unit. Alright, finally, the Skink Priest, being a Psyker, has 3 different powers from Biomancy. And one is Iron Arm, one is Smite, and the other one is Hemorrhage, which is, I guess they're all kind of good. Definitely, these are drawn randomly, but they're definitely thematic. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do. maybe they'll do nothing. Okay, but anyway, so that's the army that kind of is in the center of this board, and it's what this chaos is trying to destroy, and it's what the Harlequins are trying to protect, as well as destroying each other. Okay, so that's the scenario. Hope you guys kind of get a feel for it, so that when you actually start to actually watch the battle report that's going to be coming out in a couple days, you will actually understand what's going on and why things are happening the way they are. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. That'll be the actual mission number 5, the prologue. Bye-bye.